Um, I'm Sally Mann. I'm usually a photographer. So tonight, I thought I'd read a little piece about a trip I took back in the late 90s down south, down to Mississippi and Louisiana. The road out of Greenwood, Mississippi, slices through Loess Hills, soft as spoon bread, dropping down precipitously into the black ferment of the Delta. As I made my way down, oncoming drivers laboring up the steep lane opposite never failed to raise from the steering wheel a welcoming forefinger, the universal farmer's salute. And not just the congenial black faces behind the wheels of the low-slung Grands Prix and Catalinas, but also the good old boys in late model, multi-antennaed, white F-150 pickups, the NRA sticker on the back window just below the shotgun. It was just such a truck that I heard coming slowly across the fields where I was photographing a burned-down ruin of a plantation house. I knew that distinctive Ford engine noise. Not that I could see it, I couldn't. I was stuck under the darkroom curtains at the back of the Suburban with a newly sensitized plate that I wasn't about to ruin by looking out. The problem was I was in deep trespassing shit. I had been driving way out in the country, miles from any paved road, when I had seen these siren song columns. The home they once supported long burned to the ground, surrounded by live oaks trailing Spanish moss. Irresistible. The hitch was that they were behind a fence hung every several feet with no trespassing signs, and they purported to mean business. Trespassers will be shot. Violators will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. That kind of thing. Like Odysseus untied, tantalized by the vision of these columns, I pushed the Suburban through a gap I found in the barbed wire, sailed right in, and set to work. When I heard the pissed-off sound of that truck approaching, I knew I had more problems than a run-over dog. Under the dark cloth, I prepared my most ingratiating grin. The engine cut off and everything was silent, save the ticking of cooling metal. After a few uneasy moments, the door opened and I heard footsteps approaching. In the pause that followed, I imagined a gun barrel being raised by a Bull Connor-ish kind of man to that part of the dark cloth where my back, given the evidence of the legs below, would be. Awful nice day for taking a picture, the gentlest of southern voices spoke to the dark cloth. I couldn't believe my ears. Or my eyes when I emerged and saw him. He didn't look mean or angry at all. In fact, he had the benign, lazy look of somebody who'd gotten into a sizable mess of nookie the night before. Hiking himself up on his tailgate while I shot this picture, his eyes now intent beneath the tufted beam of his brow, he tore out page after page from a spiral-bound notebook on which he had drawn maps of other easily trespassable places. By the time I packed up my stuff, he had stacked a chatty-edged pile of scribbled pages on my passenger seat, promised to call his friends to ensure their help, and invited me back to meet the missus. The proverbial hospitality of the South may be selectively extended, but it is not a myth. The man was as gracious to this brazen trespasser as if I were Tocqueville back for a second visit. The whole trip was like that. Kind people, moldering ruins around every turn, and perfect weather, like some parallel state of grace. Everywhere I went, even the drabbest, most mongrelly backwash was enlightened by a glimmer of possibility. One evening, after a day of driving, I stopped at the edge of a raw expanse of logged-over red clay. From the open window of a nearby, newly built, fake plantation home, naked of trees and propped up with styrofoam columns, came the ravishingly beautiful, perfectly phrased chords of Beethoven's Pathétique Sonata. Transfixed, I leaned against the Suburban as the familiar notes, infused with a professional passion and restraint, drifted across the wasteland. Unrestrained myself, I walked up the porch steps, cupping my hands against the fly-specked window screen to discover within the pianist Simone Dinnerstein sitting before a Chickering grand piano, attended on her right by a man who suffered the ravages of leprosy. At once, the humdrum and the miraculous, the inelegant and the ineffable.